I'm Randy Bowers. I'm the Associate Dean Academic for the Faculty of Engineering.
And I'm Jacqueline Stagner, the Undergraduate Programs Coordinator in the Faculty of Engineering.
Today we're going to talk about the assessment of learning outcomes, and I'm going to do the best I can not to focus on the script. The process for learning outcomes begins with the instructor. Each instructor thinks about what is the subject matter, what are the skills that I expect my students to demonstrate over the course of the semester, and from those, they develop the learning outcomes. I suppose if you're in chemistry, there's going to be a course that has a learning outcome that says something like balance and oxidation reduction reaction.
Well, a course in psychology may have a learning outcome that asks students to list and explain the stages of grief.
Now, each course is going to have a number of learning outcomes. The instructor will decide how many. In Faculty of Engineering, what do we say? Normally no less than 3, no more than 8, trying to keep the number under control because you do have 40 classes in the program. Another thing we have to consider is that the learning outcomes themselves have to be easy to measure or quantify. So that's why we don't use words like understand to lead off a learning outcome, because it would be kind of difficult to put numbers on the words understand. We tend to focus learning outcomes with words like list or identify or compare or even apply.
And if you're watching this video, we'll assume that you have an understanding of the 9 characteristics of a University of Windsor graduate, which are acquisition, application, and integration of knowledge, research skills, critical thinking and problem-solving skills, literacy and numeracy skills, responsible behavior to self, others, and society, interpersonal and communication skills, teamwork and personal and group leadership skills, creativity and aesthetic appreciation, and ability and desire for continuous learning.
As the instructor, you map your learning outcomes onto whichever of the 9 characteristics of a University of Windsor graduate makes the most sense.
Each learning outcome should demonstrate a student's competence in one of the characteristics of a University of Windsor graduate. A particular course will not have learning outcomes across all characteristics. However, in students' programs, they will be exposed and have the opportunity to demonstrate their competence across all characteristics.
Jackie, when I talk to faculty members about putting together their learning outcomes, I always ask them to do one thing, and that's to consider the program chair. Because the program chair is the person who has to deal with the fact that are all 9 of the characteristics of the University of Windsor graduate covered with all the learning outcomes across all of the courses. The one thing that faculty members often have trouble with is some of what I'd consider to be the more difficult of the characteristics. For example, you might not be comfortable putting a learning outcome for your class on responsible behavior to self, others, and society, because how would I measure that? Or where does that fit in my class? But what I always say to faculty members is, pick one of the more difficult ones. Continuous learning. Integrate it in your class and assess it. Your program chair is definitely going to be happy when they see data coming in some of the more traditionally difficult ones to assess. The other issue that we talk about is the first thing faculty members think about with assessment is, okay, I'm going to put together a test problem. I'm going to put it on the midterm, I'm going to put it on the final, and that's exactly how I'm going to get all the numbers that I need to assess the student outcome.
That's right, Randy. An instructor may have a learning outcome that is assessed best by a test question. However, the instructor may also have a learning outcome that is assessed best by a homework assignment or a report or a lab activity. They need to think about where to best assess each learning outcome. Also, it's important for instructors to remember to collect the data separate from the entire final exam mark.
I know when we had the last CEAB, Canadian Engineering Accreditation Board visit, faculty members were giving me, this was the score on my final exam. That's my learning outcome assessment. And I'd have to go back and say, okay, you wanted to look at this aspect. Let's pull one question off the test and look at the results of that one question. So yes, keeping the individual test score separate from the full test score is an important aspect.
Or a rubric item that measures teamwork specifically, to record that separately from the entire rubric score as well.
Yeah. And with respect to rubrics, I know not a lot of you out there may be familiar with what a rubric is, and that's going to have to be a separate video if that's okay. So, faculty member says, I took all the numbers from the student scores from one question on my final exam and I'm done, right? And I have to say, well, for this year, in this course, for that particular learning outcome, you're done. What faculty members are starting to realize is that you assess a learning outcome 1 year, and then maybe the next year, or maybe you wait a year, but maybe 2 years hence, you measure it again. And the idea is that we have this continuous improvement process. We're always comparing learning outcome from 1 year to the next. Every program on campus is subject to, and I always get it wrong, Institutional Quality Assurance Program. And so there's a report that's due every 6 or 7 years. The data from the learning outcomes assessment are one of the inputs into that report for the program.
And in an effort for continuous improvements, the data that are collected, the results that we receive for the learning outcomes, should inform course level and program level changes. For instance, if students consistently do poorly on a homework assignment that is assessing a certain learning outcome, this reflection should be given to changes that may need to be made. Make those changes and then measure it again next offering.
Great. All right. If you're still with us, we would like to share with you some of what we consider the best practices that we do in the Faculty of Engineering. They may or may not work for your program, but we're going to let you know how we work it. The first thing is the 9 characteristics of a University of Windsor grad. We take each one of those and we break it into 2 or 3 indicators. And those indicators sort of focus on the aspects of the characteristic that we expect the students to be able to demonstrate.
For example, the characteristic that deals with critical thinking and problem solving, we've broken down into 3 indicators that are: classify a given problem according to commonly used solution methods, recognize given and missing information, assumptions, and information to be gathered for the solution method, and execute a problem solution and interpret the results.
So as an engineering instructor, I look at those 3 indicators for the critical thinking and problem solving, and automatically for my classes, I know that I could write a test problem or a homework assignment that would address that indicator. You, on the other hand, are not in engineering, so you may have 3 indicators for problem solving that look completely different from the ones that we use in engineering. Each discipline, each program is probably going to be unique in that aspect. One of the things that is not going to be unique is where do we do the assessment? I mean, if I'm thinking critical thinking and problem solving, there may be 15 classes across the program that would be able to address that with a learning outcome. That's a whole lot of data. So in engineering, we made the decision to look at any individual indicator in only 3 classes. We limit the indicator assessment to 3 classes.
And this is where engineering may require more steps than your program. In engineering, we measure the indicators in 3 areas.
We wanted to be able to assess student learning at 3 separate spots within the program to just see the progression of their learning. We hope that, for example, with critical thinking and problem solving, that if we address it in first year and then measure it again in maybe second or third year and in 4th year, over the course of those 3 evaluations, we're going to see that the student's skill in the area of problem solving is increasing.
Let's return to the spreadsheet of raw data that we have collected. We need to take that data and put it into results, assessment results. So we bin it according to the following categories. Exceeds expectations is a mark greater than 80%. Meets expectations is a mark between 60 to 80%. And does not meet expectations is a mark lower than 60%. It's expected that with each offering of the course, the percentage of students that meet or exceed expectations is maintained or improves each time.
I know when I was getting the data for one of my classes, I was really worried that I had a number of students, it was probably 20%, that didn't meet expectations in one area. And it was kind of interesting when our external accreditors came in and they said, what we're looking for is continuous improvement. So over the course of the next 1, 2, or 3 offerings of the class, we want to bring that down from 20%. The idea is that, as you said, we're always looking to increase or at least maintain the numbers of students in the meets or exceeds bins. All right, we're going to stop here. Hopefully you're not on information overload. In the future, we're hoping to be able to share with you the continuous improvement process in the Faculty of Engineering, maybe bring some data onto the website. At this point, we wish you the best as your program begins its process of learning outcomes assessment. For engineering, I'm Randy Bowers.
And I'm Jacqueline Stagner.
Thanks.
Thank you.